Hello, my name is Dr. Courtney Boddie. I was not able to get the system to work properly for me. It was not saving my video responses after multiple attempts. So I thought that I would record a video of my own and send it your direction. Um, Question one, how was your experience so far as a candidate for the company? Did you face any difficulties with the job application? So far, the experience has been very positive. I enjoyed perusing your website and learning a little bit about the practice. I thought that the process of applying was simple and appreciate that very much. I valued the relatively quick follow-up email as well as the very thorough instructions to prepare, and really think the system that you use is cool with the first round videos. So things have been smooth on my end. Thank you for asking. Question two, have you ever been a customer of our company? If so, how was your experience? No, I've never worked with your practice before. Question three, why did you choose to become a counselor? So, growing up, I am the eldest child of a pastor, and so spent a lot of time in a church setting and was most inspired by the physicians and the nurses with whom I attended that church. Their contribution to our community was profound. It was very clear that there were a number of folks with a variety of medical issues, metabolic, diabetes related things in particular, is what I remember from childhood, and the need to sort of respond to folks who are having an experience during the worship, and being able to appreciate that sort of like my job is to contribute to the community and to at least strive to improve overall quality of care was something that I really took home with me. I knew that while I wanted to grow up and contribute to health in a meaningful way because of these experiences, and so while it was known that we should go to a physician or nurse practitioner or physician assistant for our physical body's care, it wasn't so much known at that time where you go to get care for your mind, and is that even a something that we would be willing to and open to do? And at that time, not so much. But it's remarkable in 35 years how things have changed. Um, this led me to pursue my master's and my doctorate in counseling. And while I'm very proudly a generalist, so whatever concerns people are dealing with, I've had the proper experiences and training to work with them, whether it's substance abuse and schizophrenia or grief, depression and anxiety. I got you. I'll also say that I specialize in a couple of areas that I wanted to share with you as well, which include trauma, quote, men's issues, ADHD and executive functioning, and psychological testing broadly defined. So question number four, what did you like about our website? How do you feel in alignment with our mission and with our philosophy? So first of all, I found your messaging and graphics to be very warm and inviting. The term stigma free is something that stood out to me and is aligned with my belief that everyone deserves to be helped and for that help to be provided in the frame of their cultural context. And we can't do so actively stigmatizing folks. The term holistic, however, is what really stood out to me. It resonated. As we know, our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors are interconnected with our nutrition, what our sex life looks like, the extent to which we're experiencing quality sleep, and the connection that we're experiencing in its quality. So, as a counselor, I see it as my job to conceptualize these factors that connect, as you put it, heart, mind, and body to detect maldevelopment, maladaptation, and maladjustment instead of abnormality. And that's how stigma free finds its way into my notion of holism. I also really value that you offer Spravato, neurofeedback, ketamine, PEMF, EDTA chelation, IV infusion therapies, NAC, Reiki, and a meaningful exploration of nutrition, supplements, herbs, and vitamins, in addition to offering folks pharmaceutical interventions. In my work with psychiatrists and psychiatry providers, it has been stark the distinction between those who function from a pure biological psychiatric stance and those whose work truly is inclusive of the variety of factors that are likely to be contributing to the concerns that people are bringing into us. And so seeing that broadly displayed on the website, and also, I mean, the business's name really speaks to me and feels aligned with how I trained and why I found my way over to that training in the first place. So, question 5: how long have you been in the mental health field? What areas have you worked in prior? So, I've been in the field for 13 years, working in university and private practice settings. And I'll say I've also worked in a group practice. This includes Change Incorporated, which is an in person group practice in St. Louis, Missouri. And that's actually one of the places where I completed my licensure hours, my residency. And University of Health Science and Pharmacy. When I was a counseling resident, I worked at those two spaces. I was director of counseling services at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, for about 5 years, and have been the owner of my own practice, Renard Consulting, which is an Illinois PLLC, for several years now. And the consulting work has focused heavily on assessment, supervision, and consultation services that counselors are in need of, counselors and um, other allied health professionals. So, question number 6: what was your best experience so far as a counselor? I would say that working in private practice has a special place in my heart. There's a sense of professional family that I have particularly enjoyed, and also the ways in which, if you do it online, working in private practice, especially, can be very siloed. So when you have the opportunity to work in group with others while still being able to do remote, I feel like I have gotten and am getting the best of both worlds, the collaboration and also the autonomy. Um, I've also really valued the diligence of the clients that tend to come this way when, as you know, when patients are presented with a wide variety of options, choosing yours can be quite a feat sometimes. And because of that, I've noticed that people tend to come in ready to work in a way that's different than if that service is provided in a way that to the person at point of service feels free. Um, and so, like working in a school setting, for example. So, as much as I've loved my college experiences, there's something in particular about private and group practice that really lingers. Question number 7: what appeals to you about working for Heart, Mind, Body? I love that you are a perfect practice of professional nurse practitioners, therapists, and coaches. For quite some time, I've been interested in working in direct collaboration with prescribing APRNs. It would be an honor to be the counselor working alongside you. I have an incredible value for integrated care. I recently completed an interim directorship where I worked alongside a DNP, PMHNP, FNP with full practice authority. And I found that to be a fantastic experience. Please sign me up for more. So, question number 8: how would you best support other newly hired counselors? Having been a hiring manager for counselors now for about a decade, I would say that the things that seem to trip folks up the most at time of hire would be maybe them not getting the proper opportunity to ask questions. I think sometimes there can be maybe such an emphasis on the part of the entity that's hiring to onboard in a, let me tell you kind of way. When I find that, usually speaking, people have quite a bit of experience. And so if we can field what it is that they're curious about, it's perhaps the case that they, through best practices, know a lot of those things and could need maybe this much, of direct instruction from us and maybe this much in a more consultative sort of frame. I also noticed that those are two different type of relational qualities. One is rather hierarchical and one is much more peer oriented. And anytime that power differential between individuals can be leveled, right? Recognizing that it isn't probably quite like that, but something more like that than like this. That tends to be a great way to invite in and to make people feel like they have a vested stake in whatever is happening here um, for the time that they're a part of it. And so fielding questions about practice protocols in particular is where I like to start or have liked to start. And then spending time in the EHR, because realistically, billing, patient communication, charting, if there is an instant messenger within the EMR, then even communication between providers can be taking place that way. And those are some of the things that I have just seen be helpful in my time. So, question 9, how would you ensure compliance to legal and ethical standards in your practice of counseling? I think of ethics like bumpers and have a series of practices, mostly in the form of questions that I've learned to ask myself, like quickly and intuitively throughout the process, that help not to get so far along that you're making decisions that you realistically need to have gathered more information for. Um, and so those questions that I ask myself throughout the process and that adjourns with the charting gives me a contained frame in which to be intentional. And these questions themselves are informed by ethical principles. So beneficence, non-maleficence, fidelity, autonomy, justice, and models of ethical decision making. So the American Mental Health Counselor Association has one that I prefer to use. And one of the steps in the consultation is to review legal standards. And so, what I appreciate about what it means to sort of center ethics in your practice is that it also encourages you to center the law as well. Um, 10, question number 10. Do you think a high GPA or kindness is a more important quality and why? Kindness, which I see as one part perspective taking and one part compassion, is where I would land. As a counselor, I practice Adlerian therapy, which, in short, seeks to support patients in upgrading outdated patterns in living by first identifying mistaken beliefs and assessing the function the reportedly mistaken behaviors serve. Its key indicator of health from an Adlerian perspective is social interest, um, which measures our capacity to engage in pro-social or altruistic behavior. So, as grounded in this theory, I believe it's essential to acknowledge that we humans came down from the trees and have thrived in many ways because we work together. Everything from learning to exercising to navigating the economy is best done collaboratively. Encouraging genuine kindness goes further in that way than GPA does. Everyone needs to be incredibly literate, right? Otherwise, those with pre-existing high GPA should be encouraged on their journey without the cost of discouraging those who are naturally inclined toward kindness. Question 11. What team communication tools have you used? What was your experience with them? So I've used Teams, email, text, and EHR-based instant messaging. I probably liked IM the best because it's a one-stop shop that's allowed for communication with patients, other individual providers, and with groups of providers, with the added level of security and a level of integrity since it's connected to the chart itself. So I'll just be writing anything in here. Um, that I found to be quick and um, in the circle from a HIPAA compliance point of view as well. How would you overcome communication challenges in a remote team? So I've actually not found working remote to be a problem. I have been full-time faculty on a remote basis. seen clients, supervised, done consultation, etc. And frankly, during the pandemic, was having remote friends. So I'll say that those experiences have really sort of like opened me up to ways in which you can experience quality human communication without the direct face-to-face piece, or the ease of accessibility always. Um, I find that, especially in my faculty work, teams in specific, because that one-stop shop is similarly um, an integrity sort of piece of there's compliance here and people are looking at this. So don't just write everything, but you could write and call, um, and attach files and those sorts of things. And so in that, for that kind of work context, that was really, really great. Um, and then I always find that having folks' numbers to be able to communicate things like, hey, it's your birthday, and I wanted to say hi, even though I'm not there to participate in the party, which may not be the best message to send over I am in the chart type of thing. So having a few easy to access methods, but really the one, like for clinical purposes, the EHR to me stands out as an easy one, assuming that it's got a built-in instant message function. So question 13, what types of activities or hobbies do you enjoy outside of work? I enjoy doing a lot of things. I like to cook. Um, I own a home with my two younger siblings, and it's a relatively large space, so we kind of have our own, floors. And I do the cooking for the family and really, really, really enjoy that. I think there might have been a time that I wanted to be a chef, but perhaps didn't want to like that to be the only job that I had. I also love singing. There was definitely a time that I was going to school for music and then thought, I love that. And I have more questions when school is done about the mind and how people get better. So sometimes I do think that it would have been a fun idea to do music therapy, but I didn't know anything about music therapy at the time. I really like interior design, and my probably one of my pastimes with my mother growing up would have been watching HDTV and going to Home Depot and wherever else to, you know, do a side project or I don't know, finish a room or something along those lines. But I think the sort of like application of creativity and the sense of gratification does something for me. I'm a huge fan of TV and film. I'm definitely a cinemaphile. Um, Probably, I don't know that there's anything that I super don't like, maybe bad acting, and bad direction and bad editing. But I think I'm pretty open, I think, to that art form. And of course, time with the family. We've been together now for a little over a year. And before that, we're working all over and doing all different sorts of things. So just didn't get to see each other that much. And it's nice now that my nieces and my nephews are two floors up, instead of, an hour west. So 14, how would you change an institutional, this is how we have always done it attitude if you felt there was a better approach? So I would treat it like it was a clinical matter with a client. As I see it in my mind, there appears to be some status quo or even some kind of a resistance. If you're attempting to introduce a new kind of thought and you're greeted at the door with a closed stance, I would then seek to understand what function being entrenched around this thing is serving and attempt to explore the effectiveness of the current method, compared to a newer one. I found that folks are often more concerned about properly implementing and scaling a new thing in a time frame than they are necessarily wholly opposed to it. Um, in other words, I think that bad timing is real. And I also think that when there's a culture of your ideas matter and here's how we would implement and onboard a new idea. I feel like that's probably one of the ways that, especially in my experiences as a director, have attempted to sort of work around that because, you show up and people have a way of doing things and they're smart people. And so it's not like it's a terrible way of doing things. But there for a variety of reasons, including changes in legal compliance, that there might be a need to do something different, and ideally better. Um, so that's how I have come to think about that. And then question 15, are you interested in full-time employment, part-time, or per diem? I'm interested in starting at part-time and growing towards a full caseload. So I guess if I don't know exactly how you stipulate things, so I don't want to go too hypothetical here, but let's say that 10 hours a week is part-time or something like that, and 20 hours is closer to full-time. Starting with sort of 10 slots and getting those filled and then like opening up an 11th and 12th would be kind of what I have in mind overall. Um, that is the end of my video interview. Thank you so much for showing any level of interest in me. I really value the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself, my experiences, and my interest in joining a remote practice where I have the opportunity to work with the patient and um, identify that there is a need for care from a PMHNP and not have to go in search of one. That, as you know, from being in the field, is really challenging to not have your already established counseling and medical relationships established. And so, more so than anything else, that's what I'm responding to with this job posting is the excitement of expanding my knowledge of um, being able to easily refer a client, but not just the referral, the active co-management of patients. When I mentioned that experience of working with the DNP earlier, what was so fantastic was every client that was seen in our shared practice went through a triage nurse, and it was remarkable the number of people who believed that they were coming in with the medical concern and were diverted to mental health non-medical services, and those who came in with I only need to talk to somebody concerned, and it was discerned rather quickly that a lot of the anxiety or depression you're experiencing might be attributable to the PCOS that we talked about recently, as just one example. And so again, thank you for your interest and for your flexibility and hopefully being open to reviewing a video submitted in a different format. Thank you.